to the outside world was thriving. I mean, as far as I had great friends and my kids were active and I was active, I'm big into sports, so I was running and stuff. But inside, my inner light was just feeling like it was slowly dying. And I remember thinking that I felt like I was almost like this deck of cards. You know, when you put your cards together and you stack the house up. What is the dream you want for yourself? And I was just kind of like, well, holy shit. I don't know. But then when Bob said, don't let another person steal your dreams, you don't need to know the how. And so, or like, it's better to be safe than sorry. No, the hell it is. The time you say that it's better to safe than sorry, that means that you're not trying. So you're accepting what you have. And, as we get into the power of thought, into the laws of the universe, we realize then that with the law of vibration, nothing stays the same. We're either creating or disintegrating. So when someone says, I just want to stay where I'm at, you're really saying, I'm going to go backwards. There's nothing more for me.
The power you seek lies within you, as we are each infinite beings living a human experience. The truth of who and what we are has been hidden from us until now. Awaken, my friends, to this new reality that we are in fact creating everything through the power and the gift of our wonderful imagination. Join me as I unlock the secrets of our past and reveal the truth that has been clouded in this veil we call life. What reality will you choose to create today? The choice is yours. Welcome, my friends, to My Reality Practice. Hello and welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us today on the Reality Practice podcast. I'm your host, Joey Kramer, and today's guest is Stacey Vanthuyne. Stacey is a passionate, high-energy creative and a mother of two. She is focused on educating and empowering and inspiring people to become their best self and to live a more fulfilled life through the power of thought. After spending over 20 years in the corporate world, Stacey began to realize that although she was happy in life, there was more that she could be doing. So she made a decision, faced her fears, and pushed past her comfort zone and began to finally invest in herself. Studying and mentoring under the legendary Bob Proctor and Dr. Joe Dispenza, as well as many others, she's learned how to harness the power of the quantum and has realized her true power to create. And she's now changing the lives of people across the world. She is a certified mindset coach with the Proctor Gallagher Institute, the founder of Raise Your Results Consulting, where she's a coach and a professional speaker who's dedicated to helping bring out the best in individuals and teams as she guides them to realize their true potential. So without further delay, let's welcome Stacey to the Reality Practice podcast. Hello, my friend. How are you doing?
Oh, Joey, that's so nice of you. Thanks for having me here. I'm doing really well. I'm phenomenal. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Just back from Mexico, so I'm trying to get back into the swing of things. So hope I might be a little rusty here, but nothing to worry about. So I'm so excited to have you on the show. I wanted to have you dive into the power of our mind, and most importantly, the power of our mindset when it comes to creating our reality. So let's just dive right into it. Where did this transformation begin for you? You said you were in the corporate world for over 20 years and that you were happy, but you kind of knew there was something still missing. You had a feeling. Can you share what that feeling was like and kind of what happened? Because I know a lot of our listeners probably have that same feeling, and if they do, they don't even know what to do with it. It's like, now what? So
yeah, totally. I love
it.
Yeah, no worries. I think, like you said, I think a lot of people have this feeling that, we've been so conformed to live this life of mediocrity. A lot of us, for me, I was born thinking, as long as I can live the life that I was grown up as, that's all I want. I wanted to get a degree. I wanted to get a good corporate role where I could save for my own retirement. I always wanted to be a mom, so I knew I wanted to be a mom. And ultimately, my parents had helped me through school, so it was a goal of mine was that I would help my kids through university. And kind of got to this age of like 40 and finding myself that I was doing all of those things, and yet there was this like something missing. And so I wouldn't say this was an easy journey for myself. I found myself going to other avenues to fill that. So, I mean, going out, maybe having drinks. I smoked pot, which would just kind of like let me be okay with the moment. I wasn't in a happy marriage, and yet I didn't leave. But I, to the outside world, was thriving. I mean, as far as I have great friends and my kids were active and I was active, I'm big into sports. So I was running and stuff. But inside, my inner light was just feeling like it was slowly dying. And I remember thinking that I felt like I was almost like this deck of cards, when you put your cards together and you stack the house up. And, I was holding it together for my career. I was holding it together for my family. But if I went down, I felt like we were all going down. And so I just came to this point one day when somebody asked me, Stacey, what is it that you want? What do you dream of? And in that moment, I just started telling about how I had this dream to save for my retirement and to be able to put my kids through school and hope that they're like happy, productive members of society. And the person looked at me and said, well, that's great for your kids. What is the dream you want for yourself? And I was just kind of like, well, holy shit. I don't know. And so I start there with sharing that because I think a lot of us, we would live for the weekends because it's our time to like let go and actually we're around our friends and feel like, it's outside of just the humdrum of waking up and going to a job that it's not that I didn't love my job. My job has always been in people leadership and change management. So this is just a different avenue of it that I'm in now. But it wasn't allowing me to fully express myself. I still had to hide pieces of myself or conform to be in senior management and what that would look like. I remember one time someone told me, like, you're like this diamond that if you just like shave some off here, we would fit you perfectly into this role. And I'm like what part of me do you want to like hide? And what it was sometimes my energy,
right.
Because they want you to fit in and look and talk like everybody else. And that's not what made me special as a leader. So anyways, to get there is I just kind of woke up and realized that I didn't have a dream for myself. I also in that moment realized that I've been an unconscious confident. Everything that I've wanted up until this point has actually transpired. What's made me stuck is that I've stopped dreaming. And truthfully, that's when Bob Proctor crossed my path. And I will never forget him saying this was, don't let another person steal your dream. And so now that I had started to think of these dreams, that I then instantly went to thinking, well, these aren't possible. Like, how am I going to get there? But then when Bob said, don't let another person steal your dreams, you don't need to know the how. It just clicked. Like, I didn't know the how I was going to go to university. I didn't know the how I was going to have a family. I didn't know the how I was going to do everything that I had achieved up to date. So why did I feel like I need to micromanage it going forward? And that's when I really decided to dive into personal development and understand the power of our minds. And that's kind of a long-winded answer around that, but
I want to dive deep into what happened next and Bob and Dispenza and this whole path. But we gotta go backwards a little bit because you hit on some I've got a ton of notes already, and it's like, wow, I want to hit all these things. First is, you talked about you were living a life of conformity and mediocrity. And it's like, I feel like so many of us out there are just walking, we're like zombies, just walking through the motions each and every day. Where do you think this idea comes from for people like, just get your job? Well, I mean, I know where it comes from, but where do you think, share with the audience, get a job, go to school in different orders, go to school, get a job, get a house, raise a family, be a grandparent. I mean, where does this story come from?
Oh, I just love this. And I smile because like, really, this is where we really need to go, right? Because my goal is helping other people like you and I to wake up, to realize that just because we've had a belief in the past doesn't make it true. And, we want the best for our kids. And yet unknowingly, we're placing these limits on them by trying to protect them from society making fun of them or from stepping out and being their own individual selves, right? And so that's kind of where my story was, is that, I have amazing parents. I have a very loving relationship with my parents who only ever wanted the best for me. But I remember them saying things like this: well, you could try that, but we don't want you to be disappointed. Right.
I had the same mom. Right there,
right?
The fear of disappointment, like don't try because it'll hurt you so bad. I'm like, you don't know what gonna hurt me or not. Come on.
Well, and that's just it. And so, or like, it's better to be safe than sorry. No, the hell it is. The time you say that it's better to safe than sorry, that means that you're not trying. So you're accepting what you have. And, as we get into the power of thought, into the laws of the universe, we realize then that with the law of vibration, nothing stays the same. We're either creating or disintegrating. So when someone says, I just want to stay where I'm at, you're really saying, I'm going to go backwards. There's nothing more for me.
That makes so much sense. Yes.
Right. And so where it comes from, I think, is way back in just the way we're brought up in schooling and our parents, and just us never questioning why we think what we think, why we do what we do, and why we only kind of place our limits on what we know versus understanding and recognizing we're all filled with infinite potentials. And the only limit we place, or the only limit we have, is the limits we place on ourselves. And yet we're okay with that. And okay. So that's, like I said, I love this because okay is like what I want people to recognize is okay is not okay.
No,
and when you say
sucks.
you want, yes. And there's a place where it's okay to want more. In fact, you should. The whole purpose in life is to grow. So if you're not saying that you want to be better, then you're basically saying you're going backwards. And that's kind of how I got to at 40 when I realized, like, oh my gosh, I have all these things. And it was like, well, what the hell? Am I supposed to just tap out and say, this is as good as it gets? I might as well just ride down the hill as you see these other things. And I was like, no, I'm not. There's an inner lioness inside of me that has been dying to get out for these past years. Like, let her out and just get over the fact of being a people pleaser and wondering and worrying about what others will think. But, again, the people that we care about most are some of those people that just want to keep us safe and say, we don't want you disappointed. And yet it's just that really hurts us. So where it comes from is just conditioning over the past of not recognizing that we were never really we were created to decide, but that we are really never, as soon as we start school, we've been conformed to live from our external senses, to live by what we hear, taste, touch, smell, and feel versus what we feel intuitively, and to go to our imagination and use our perception and our creative factors where we were. And then that's really, I think, where it gets us, is that we start living towards keeping up with the Joneses versus creating our own life.
And John Maxwell talks a lot about it as one of his principal laws. And it's that law of the cap. Most people are living with, they put a cap on what they think they can do. And that's as good as it gets, and you cannot literally go past that. That's as high as you're going to get. So with my kids, I've been telling them almost since they were born, and encouraging them that they can literally do anything. We teach them mindset principles, and to not care what anybody thinks. This is their world, their reality to create. So I love it, that's what you teach, and that's what you preach for people, and teach them how to practice it. Some people, and talking, you were saying it sounds like a midlife crisis. And I think we've always heard it as a midlife crisis, right? Like that's a label they put on it. But for you, right around 40, it wasn't it looked like a midlife crisis, but it was you just wanting to understand and figure out who you were. You said on the inside, you're like a house of cards, pull the card and you're going to crumble. And I think it's an easy out. Like, oh, he's having a midlife crisis. No, it's our inside hurting so bad, saying, I want more, right?
I want more, and us ignoring it. And I love that we're talking about midlife, because for me, I think it's really important is that's where I really want to help people, because I think that a lot of people think, well, I have a coach, or because I want more, there must be something wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with you, but there's better. And when you go to change, it's not like, I was talking to one of my clients the other day, and they said, I'm really excited to make this change, but I don't know if people will know who I am, or something to that effect, right? And I said, listen, you're not changing who you are at the core. You're bringing more of the good stuff out, and the shit that's holding you back, you're letting go of. So it's not like one day you're just going to show up and be a radically different person as far as, what you want and things that make you happy. You're just going to feel empowered to do more of those and to follow your dream, to stand in your truth. It's like, I know there's a cliche, I think a little bit right now around saying, well, step into your authentic self. For me, easier said than done, because I had been hiding who my authentic self was for so long. I didn't even know her. Right? Like, I knew there was more, but who she is, and I'm still evolving. I think that's what we all learn on this journey, is that it is a continuous journey. Every day when you increase your conscious awareness and your understanding of yourself, you just see that there's more to understand, and that you want different things, and you're always continually to move. So for me, when we talk about this midlife crisis, what I believe is happening in this time is that people are waiting for something on their outside world to bring them happiness. And what we need to help people understand is it doesn't matter what's going on in your outside world. It's only you that can choose that happiness. And so where do you need to go? And lately I've been coining it honestly as sexy is an inside job, because I see so many people, and this is part of my story, and maybe I'll get into it now, is that where they're in these 40s, we've had our children, we're having these changing relationships as far as whether our kids need us as much. Right. And parents are changing as well. So our role we play in life is different, right? And then we're waking up, maybe if our kids are leaving, and we're looking over at our partner and we don't even really recognize them anymore, or who we are anymore, but looking to them to fix us or to feel something, and then saying, oh, they don't. And so we're not happy in our relationship, or you're having an affair, or different things, right? Where again, it doesn't matter about that person. It's only you that can make you whole. So in my case, when I woke up at 40 and realized I was in this unfulfilled relationship, I actually didn't have the courage or the awareness really to stand in my boundaries and to say, this isn't for me anymore. I'm done. I would say it, but we never said it enough to like actually end it. And I was worried about what other people would think. And I'm from Catholic, so what would happen if I got divorced? And, and that's where I really talk about, like, I was starting to have this insight just really fall apart. And I wasn't owning my truth. And in that, I went outside. I looked for outside validation versus finding it in myself. And that's when I realized, like, something's got to change, because it wasn't who I am not to feel happy and sexy inside. And I had actually an affair in my marriage, and I don't regret that affair for what it brought to me, which was this like awakening of, oh my God, I'm more than a mom, and oh my God, I'm more than corporate, and oh my God, I'm really not happy. Like, I'm not happy.
It was a remembrance, basically.
Right. But I want to help people to recognize that you don't have to have that affair to feel that. Like, all you have to do is like bring awareness to yourself and admit to yourself that you're not happy, and then make a decision to do something different. And so, for me, the part I felt guilty about was that I didn't do it on my own and ended up hurting, my partner or like my ex. And that was never the intention. Right. But I knew
Right.
that I didn't want to be there, but how could it not be? But that's really what I want to help people understand, is that you can't be looking for a partner or somebody out on your outside to make you feel whole. You've got to do that work yourself. And that's really when I invested in a coach and really started to dive into personal development. And there's nothing wrong. There was just more to be found.
Right. Wouldn't you think or say, though, that that's like the catch-22? You want to help people understand that they're beautiful. They can change themselves on the inside. But the problem is they have a fear of change based on the perception of everybody else and what they look, it's like we go inside to change, but everybody's too afraid to go inside and change because they're actually afraid of what everybody else is going to think, when in fact, nobody else actually exists. There's only you creating this beautiful reality of life. And it's like you're afraid of nothing, basically, right?
It's such an oxymoron, right? Like, I mean, you're saying what's going on in my outside world isn't making me happy, but I'm afraid to change inside to make me happy because I don't want to make the outside world upset with me.
Right. And the outside world is being created by your inside world and what you believe it to be. So it's just this competitive hamster wheel of shit for most people.
Well, exactly. And I feel like, so my messages are this. One, you don't have to have a breakdown or an affair to change. You need to recognize that you're not happy and decide for different. It starts with a decision. And when you make that decision, then you put yourself in a whole new empowered state to start thinking of, well, what is it that I do want? How do I want my life to live? What would make me feel happy? And you let go of the need to micromanage it, to say, well, I need to know how to do that. That's very challenging, especially when we've been conformed for so many years. And you also let go of the expectation of how and when it will happen. You just start to believe and have faith in knowing that it will, right? And
correct. Yeah.
That's where I love to kind of relate. People are like, okay, sure, Stacey, that sounds well, let's just talk about it this way. When you have a crappy day, when you wake up late, let's say, and those are the days where you can't decide what to wear. You finally decide what to wear. You go grab your coffee, you spill coffee on it, you stub your toe, you do all these things. Like, do we really think that that's just coincidence? Or could we actually start to fathom that that's because you are vibrating on that frequency, that's what's being attracted into your life?
Right.
So when I'm living an unhappy life and I'm in this relationship that I don't want to be in anymore, but I'm getting more frustrated with things and shit just seems to be happening. I mean, we need us all to recognize is that we bring that on because we're on that frequency.
Right.
And so when we can start to think of what we want, regardless of our current or past circumstances, and get that feeling in our imagination, we automatically elevate our frequency. So as I'm sure you've shared with your guests in the past, the best way to do that at first is just by expressing gratitude and by looking for the good. So even if there's, you're not happy with my life, I could still look at the fact that I had a great corporate job. I saw beautiful children, although my relationship might not have been the best, he was still there for my kids. And you just start looking for the good versus focusing on the bad. And when you start to look for the good, you find more good. That takes you to a new state that's now going to get your imagination and feeling starting about, well, what can I do? Then, I'm already here.
I think that's a huge, I feel like that's a huge obstacle people have and out there is finding gratitude. We get bombarded with doom and gloom and negative. And I feel like so many people don't realize how easy it is to be grateful. I mean, it's like we live in a world where, especially in the United States and Canada, it's like we don't have to go hunt for our food to survive. We go to the grocery store. How do we do that? We get to drive in a freaking car and not walk or take a wagon. And then we have all this food that's refrigerated and lasts for days. I mean, it just goes on and on. And it's like all these little things that everywhere we look, It's like I'm sitting in a air conditioned or heated office right now. I'm not freezing in a freaking tent,
Right.
trying to cross the country in 1600s. I mean, it's like there's so many things to be grateful for. I feel like we struggle to
Yeah.
find those amazing parts, even the little things in life. Wouldn't you agree?
100%. I mean, and that's just it, right? I mean, we take these things for granted. And when we have to realize, it's almost like we can't feel grateful until something big happens. I can't be grateful until I get the new job. I can't be grateful until I get the new house. I can't be grateful till I'm in a happy relationship. Like that has to start within.
Hmm.
And you like that's what stops people from change too, right? Like, I mean, one, you talked about the fear of what others will think, the fear of even what their own self will think and who they're becoming, but also because they're not coming from that place of abundance, which is in gratitude. They're coming from this place of lack and scarcity that automatically, if I try something different, the what if it doesn't happen? Well, what if it does? And we just have to start thinking more around that, the possibility of yes than the fear of no. And I think that what happens is that, especially when we talk with Dr. Joe and study that, I mean, whether you're a theologist or scientist, everybody will agree, you become what you think about. Your thoughts
Right.
become things. And whether you call the omnipresence of this like energy, spirit, the universal mind, God, Allah, energy, whatever you call it, the name changes, but how it responds is the same, right? And so what I think is so amazing about this is that we have the ability to make this energy whatever we want. We have the ability to think whatever we want to think. But because we don't think, we get conformed to thinking about what others think and what we hear in the news. And so that keeps us.
Is that what you
pulled
call
back.
that unconscious competent? Is you mentioned it earlier? Is
Yeah.
that the same idea here? People are just walking around unconsciously programmed, by the news, the media. So they're creating crap because
They're
that's what they're
creating
putting
that
in, right?
exactly. You almost don't even realize that you're creating it because it hasn't been conscious. Like where I meant for myself, where I was an unconscious competent, is that I didn't even realize that because I had these dreams of going to school and all of that, having a marriage and having kids, that I was actually putting it out to the universe. And I prayed every night to God because I believe in God, and so I was actually doing these things that we teach in mindset, but not even knowing I was. But once I got those things, I just didn't dream of more. So I was stuck. But then when I found out about mindset and really start to explore how our brain works and how mind is movement and our body is a manifestation of that movement, I realized, oh my gosh, well, I've created this up to here. If I start dreaming more, then what's going to stop me from creating more? There's a quote, I'm not sure if it was Napoleon Hill, or I think it was Napoleon Hill. And he said, if a person said what they were thinking, they would have nothing to say, because we really aren't thinking. Mental activity doesn't constitute thinking. It's just keeping our brain busy, but it's not us coming up with our own thinking. And that's really where what stops, I think, people from getting different results, because we look at our outside world to start our thinking process based off of our current results. And when we start our thinking based off our current results, we're going to get the same thoughts that set our body up in the same vibration. Our body then takes those actions and it gets us the same results. Where when we really start to become aware and start dreaming about what we want and come from that place, that's a new thought, a new frequency, a new vibration that we've set our body up, which will ultimately lead to new actions, and the actions lead to new reactions with the universe that get our circumstance, our conditions, and our environments, our results. So it's just so fascinating to me that the mind and playing into this spirit and putting these thoughts out to the universe with the universal laws, that we can manifest that what we desire. I don't know. That's where I really was kind of going.
I love how you put that. I hadn't heard it put that way specifically before, but when we imagine, we're imagining new thoughts, and I envision it, the way I look at it is when we start imagining, we are tapping into one of those different frequencies that exist because they're infinite. There's infinite realities. And it's like when we start to imagine, we're jumping to this timeline or that timeline, and maybe we're seeing little glimpses of it, and it's starting to come to us. And the more vivid it becomes, the more we're getting pulled towards that frequency, right? And once we start to align to that frequency, the next thing you know, you start to become what it is you imagined, correct?
Right. Like I like to say to my clients is that think of it of what you want and who and how you would have to act and be to get that.
Mm-hmm.
Then that's what you start your affirmations and your writing on and your visualization is as the goal is already achieved.
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't say it as I'm so unhappy and grateful when I will be.
Right.
You have the thought you are. It just hasn't manifested in 3D world yet. So you say, I am so happy and grateful now that I am earning X amount of dollars, whatever specific it is that you want. And you live from that place. And so instantly in your mind, you already are on that frequency. And because you are on that frequency, then the things that are in alignment with that frequency starts to attract to you, which is when the how will start to appear for you. You'll start just like hearing different things, like the reticular activating system will be like perked up by different things because you've been impressing that conscious thought into your subconscious mind through repetition. And I think that's the biggest difference though, is making sure everybody understands it's not just because I thought it once, it will happen. It's about doing the work, right? Mm-hmm. It's not about, I read this book and now I should be able to manifest everything. You literally have to exactly see that which you desire, feel it. The feeling is what puts the energy into it. And then start to take action every day, no matter how small it is, towards that goal and becoming that person that you have in your mind. And so it's like you act as the goal is already achieved. And when you can act and see the goal is already achieved, then you align yourself with that frequency. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes, of course. I think for me, it does. I think a lot of the viewers, it makes sense too. We just had Josiah Brandt on a few weeks ago, and he's like the world's foremost expert on Neville Goddard. And Neville Goddard teaches, the feeling is the secret. Which one's that?
This is the power of awareness.
The power of awareness. And absolutely, it, you're spot on everything. We have to see it. We have to feel it. I think one of the biggest things I learned from my first mentor was the power of incantations, not affirmations. Affirmations are a little bit different versus incantations are exactly what you just said. I am this. I am that. You live in that present moment, but you start repeating them like a witchcraft, like a ceremony, incantations. And I learned 5-10 minutes in the morning, 5-10 minutes in the shower, on your commute, and you just repeat the same thing over and over and over. For me, it's like one of them is, I am wealthy and money comes to me easily and abundantly. I am wealthy. Money comes to me easily and abundantly, and over and over and over. It's so much more powerful when you're saying it and speaking it into existence than a lot of times listening. You can go on YouTube, find all the affirmations you want, and you're hearing them. That's great. Does it work? Yeah, but you want to jumpstart reality and creating it. You become I am, right? And you put those words into reality. Is that what is that a good way to explain it?
Yeah. So let's talk about that for a little bit. Okay. So why? So let's talk maybe about the difference between your conscious mind and your subconscious mind and how you do make that your reality. So your conscious mind has the ability to think, right? It has the ability to generate new ideas. It has the ability to accept and reject things. Your conscious mind is what tunes you in to your external environment through our senses, as far as taste, touch, smell, feel, and hear. And our conscious mind, is our thinking mind, where our subconscious mind is our feeling mind. And our subconscious mind, though, the thoughts and the beliefs that are in our subconscious mind, the self-image that we hold of ourselves, our internal self-image, is in our subconscious mind. And why that's such an important distinction between conscious and subconscious mind is because it's the subconscious mind that determines your vibration, that gets your body into actions, the actions that get you the results. And if your subconscious mind, different than your conscious mind, does not have the ability to think of new thoughts. It must accept what is ever impressed upon it from your conscious mind. And so that's why we do the affirmations, the incantations, is that what you called it?
Incantations, yeah.
Incantations, sorry, I don't say that word. But the visualizations, the meditations, anything repeatedly. And you need to have that desire and then attach that feeling, because it's the feeling that will like start to impress it into the subconscious mind. Now think about this. Our subconscious mind is programmed in one of two ways, either through emotional impact or by constant spaced repetition. That's why all of us do things that our parents did, our environment did, because we've been conditioned since we were one. Probably the majority of the conditioning happened even before we were 6 years old, because our analytical mind hadn't totally taken form. Our brain waves are slower. And so it gets us into easier programming of the subconscious mind. So the only way to up level your self-image, to up level your beliefs, which will ultimately get you new actions, is by that constant spaced repetition. So that's why it's so important to say those affirmations every day, morning, night, whenever you can, to have your goal on a goal card that you read every time, to, intentionally create the type of day that you want. Before you go to sleep, say again what it is that you want, because it puts it out there in the universe, but it really starts to reprogram your subconscious mind, because until you have those beliefs and that self-image in your subconscious mind, it's going to be a lot more difficult to get the results that you want.
No,
so that's just so important to realize, right?
And I hadn't heard it put that way. The subconscious mind is the feeling, and that makes total sense to me because I'm an empath. So my entire life has been literally unbeknownst to me, until the last few years. It's like my whole life has been guided by apparently my subconscious mind and all the bullshit that I had in it. And, I want to love people. I need this, I want that, but it was all coming from the feelings and stuff, the emotions inside me. And, I didn't ever put two and two together, how powerful the subconscious mind was back then and why I did the things I did.
That's right. Well, and the other part of it is why it's so important is the one thing I didn't say about subconscious, but is that your subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between real or imagined. So that's where it, like when you're having your visualizations and doing your meditation and imagining yourself there, that when you can consistently live there, that's why I say live and see it as a goal is achieved, you're tricking your subconscious mind to believe that it's already happening. And then when you start to trick it that way, then that again is setting your vibration up in a new vibration, your body into the results, which is also why there's a lovely, I don't know if it's a lovely quote, but I love this quote by Seneca that says, we often suffer more in our mind than we do in reality. So because we start to think, if we have negative thoughts about ourselves, or if an experience has happened to us in the past and we can't get past it, and we consistently think about it. Now, remember what I said, your subconscious mind doesn't have the ability to reject. It has to accept what it is being impressed upon it. And when you think about it and you attach a feeling to it, even if it's like an experience in the past, then you're reinforcing onto your subconscious mind that this is happening right now, which is where like Dr. Joe will talk about how one experience can become somebody's personality, because they have this experience and they say, just let me deal with it. I'm just saying deal with it. And a few days come by and now it's gone from an experience to a temperament to a mood to a personality part. And you say, well, why does she act like that? And they say, oh, like 7 years ago, her husband left her, right? But she can't get over, because you almost get addicted to that feeling. And when you're living and putting yourself into that state of fight or flight, and the cortisol comes into your body, then also a lot, that's where you're driving your body at dis/ease. You bring on your anxiety, your worry, your fear, your doubt, all feelings that get suppressed. And then ultimately you start to break down, but you can never change that until you recognize that that's your own thoughts that's brought you up, because you've never been able to get past that one experience.
Right.
It's wild,
Yeah.
right?
It's crazy. And I guess the new research that's coming out, we've always believed like, oh, your formative years are up until about, 7, 8 years old, even all the way into like 12 years old. But the new research, I think Dr. Joe talks about it even, is we're actually being programmed in the womb, because of the biochemical emotional reactions that our mothers are having, due to their exterior circumstances. It's firing those biochemical reactions, the serotonin, all, the fear, anything like that. And it's going through the bloodstream, literally programming us in the womb.
Yeah, like I honestly haven't said that part, but it doesn't, I don't doubt it. I mean, here's the thing, like, as a kid, we had that feeling, right? Like we would get more upset when we'd feel that our parents being upset, right? We could feel it. And that's because we're like listening to our intuition at that time, right? Our intuition still exists when we're older, but it's like a muscle. If we don't practice it, it gets weak. The same with our imagination. I'm sure you've dealt with some clients too, where like, Stacey, I can't see the picture. I have a bad imagination, or I have a bad memory. No, we have perfect memories. We have perfect intuition and imaginations, but if we don't work it, it becomes weak. And so it's a matter of like staying disciplined and consistent with that practice to strengthen it. So I'll say to someone, if you can't see it, you keep writing down what you want and slowly closing your eyes. And each day you'll get more and more and more clear on that. It'll get bigger, bolder, brighter. But I mean, don't give up on it, because that's what's happened in the past. And that's why you're feeling stuck.
Right.
So
do you use like when I work with my clients and they say they can't visualize, I try to go back to those emotional, points in their lives, those emotional memories that they can really key in on. And once they open those doors and let that emotion in, then I find a lot of times the picture starts painting itself, like, oh my God, I was right there. Like I remember it like it was yesterday, but up until that point, they couldn't see it. They couldn't imagine it. Right. I mean, is that a technique you use? Or
I mean, I think that, like, again, in order for it to impress into the subconscious mind, we need to attach that feeling to it. So if sometimes you say, if even for you, when you said, I'm so happy and grateful that I have money that flows in and through and comes to me on an increasing basis, easily, let's say, right? Or mine is, I'm so happy and grateful now that money is deposited into my account on a consistent basis and increasing amounts, right? Whatever that is. What I would say is, what would having that additional funds get for you, right? And ultimately, I think we all want freedom. So how does freedom feel? What would you do? Where would you go? Who would you be hanging out with? Start to like, oh, well, one time when I was in Mexico, I felt really free. Okay, tell me about that. And then you get them to like kind of envision, okay, well, sit in that. Like, what did the ocean smell like? What sounds were around you? And you try to like paint that picture. There was a quote that someone said to ask Van Gogh one time. They said, how do you paint such beautiful paintings? And he said, I imagine my paintings and then I paint, or I dream my paintings and then I paint my dream. And that's really what we need to do with our lives, is like, how do you want your life to be? Think of your life as your masterpiece. How would it look? What colors would be there? Who would be in there? How would you act? How would you dress?
Right.
How would you feel? And so when you do that and you start to envision and imagine your life, and you're feeling this feeling of freedom, this feeling of expected joy, of contentment, of fulfillment, then that's where you really start to, again, raise your vibration. And that's why it's so important to do it. So I don't know, as far as techniques, I just ask people to do their best with writing it down, to even like play it as a movie, disassociate it even from it, like ask them who's somebody that you really admire, what are they doing? And then not that you're going to copy that person, but what qualities of that person would you want to take on yourself? And really get them to write that down so that we start rewriting the new script of you. Because I think that a lot of people, it's not that they can't, it's that they're afraid to envision it because they're still holding themselves back, thinking from the place where they are now versus thinking of the place where they want to be.
And that fear of failure, and
if I admit it to myself and I don't do it, I don't want to disappoint myself. Well, own you, right? Like that's where I say, like on that confidence, it's like own you. Why would you do that? You would never disappoint yourself. Right. Yes, maybe in the past you've done something that you didn't love, but that's where we really work and help people to understand is that one story, one incident doesn't define us unless we let it. That experience doesn't have to be part of our personality. We allowed it to become. So stop playing that record.
That's right.
Stop it, right?
It's only the story we're telling ourselves. I say all the time, we're all a piece of the Creator. We're all that little tiny portion of God, whatever you want to call it. And we're sent here to experience this reality, this life. You think God sends us here? Think he wants to feel like shit? You think she is like, I think I'm going to go down to earth for a lifetime and just be miserable and hate myself. It's like, he's freaking God. You're God. Create the universe how you want it. Create the reality you want to see and stop beating yourself up over it. It's all in our mind, right?
It's all in our minds. And, when we talked about energy coming in at first, and I was kind of talking about how energy just is, and that we assign either a positive or a negative polarity to it, right? And when you look at all of anxiety and worry and doubt and all of these things that we can get into as guilt and shame, it really all stems from a place of assigning a negative polarity to it. And that comes from ignorance, of not knowing, right? And from that place of not knowing, it does lead to worry, doubt, which when not addressed, goes down on the path to fear, to anxiety, all feelings again that are suppressed, which makes our body break down because we're giving it different, like we're living in the state of fight or flight all the time. And then the body breaks down to dis/ease, which ultimately leads to disintegration. Law of vibration. Now, on the opposite side, if we go to the opposite side of that, the opposite of ignorance and not knowing is understanding. And we get that through study and having faith, which leads to well-being, feelings that accelerate you. You never meet somebody that's like feeling good. You're like, how are you? And they're like, I'm good, right? Like it's expressed. And that leads to body at ease, which creates. So what I like to share with people is if you're feeling fearful or doubt, ask yourself why. Because often you just need to flip to the opposite and realize there's the law of duality, polarity, however you want to say it, but there's an opposite to everything. And so I can't feel two things at once. So if I no longer want to feel worry or doubt, then what's the opposite of that? And start leaning into that. And what you need to do is understand. So understand that there's as much chance, if not more, that will go right for you than it won't. So, it's interesting, especially with my kids, right? Like I'll see that with them because I took my kid, she wanted to go skiing and she's a decent skier. And we were up at this one hill and it just looked different. The trees were different. So it looked scarier for her. Right. And she instantly would be like, I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. And like really emotional, like literally like, I can't do this. And I was like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? Stop it. Right. If you put as much effort into trying as you are right now and saying you can't, you'd already be down the hill. And so it's like recognizing in these times, like snap it. You can continue to let yourself spiral or you can stop it. Now, as a parent in that situation, that was a very good also learning opportunity for me too, because what I recognized in that is one, what I already said is that like, whether she thinks she can or she thinks she can't, she's right. and she was thinking she can't. And so that's what happened. But 2 is regardless of what I knew of for her, no matter how much I believed and knew she could, until she realized that, I can't help her to change.
Right.
So that's something I think that everyone we need to realize is that we need to take responsibility for where we are, make a decision, start thinking of what it is that we want, start living from that end state, taking steps to move there, because it's only you that can change you. It's only you that can control your thoughts.
Right.
And with her, I was just kind of like, seriously? And then sit down. I want to tell you really what I did. I wanted to like take my ski pole and just wrap her on the head for a second, like, get you out of this just for a second, like, stop, breathe, think of something else, right? But it was just such a interesting moment, because that was totally telltale. Like, we can either let ourselves spiral and start thinking in the negative, or what? So I asked her, like, what are you afraid of? What's the worst that can happen? You fall? Like, you've fallen before, the snow is soft, like, let's just go, right?
Right.
I'll
But
go
the
beside you, I'll go
but the
behind you,
fear
whatever.
there
But
is,
it really was this ignorance of not knowing. Then when she started to realize, oh, the worst I can do is fall and then get back up. Yeah. Right.
but that irrational fear kicks in. I'm going to fall. And if I fall, I could break my leg, or I could break my arm. And oh my God, what if I broke my neck and I never ski again? Then would mom have to take care of me the rest of my life? And I'll never get married. And like that simple, like, oh, I'm just scared because I might fall, turns into, I'm going to be in a wheelchair, I'm never going to get married, and I'm going to die a lonely old woman, all in the matter of like a couple seconds, right?
Well, and that goes back to that quote, right? Of people, we suffer more in our minds than in actual reality. None of that has to happen. But if you dwell on that and you think that, then of course it will be, right? It's like every time I leave my mom's house, she's like, oh, don't speed. You're going to see a police. I'm like, shh, like, don't tell me. I don't want that in my head, right? Like, it's like, why do we do that? Like, I think that this is like, I love that we're talking about this right now, because I think that this is the funny part of how society react. Like, we really think that we're doing the best for our family and our friends by telling them to be careful of what might not happen. Why are we programmed like that? Why can't we actually say, hey, try this because I really see you winning today?
Right. I think my opinion is we've lost the realization of our connection to God, right? You know, we feel we're separated from him, we feel like, and therefore the idea of death, the idea of pain, at the end of the day comes back to, oh no, if I die, there's nothing out there. Like, I don't want to die. So it's like this irrational fear, when really we just transition into the next phase. You know, it's like we just wake up the next day, believe what anybody wants to believe. But I think that's such a driving force behind it, is that fear. And I think it all goes back to that fear of separation from the creator, when we were never separated to begin with. We just had to forget that we were, to come back here and experience all this. Because if we came back here already knowing that we're connected to the creator, then what's the use of coming to learn anything? We're already back there.
Well, and that goes back to your very first question, right? Which is like, what stops a person from trying? And we've just been conditioned to fear, and fear kills more dreams than trying on those dreams. And it's the fear of death, the fear of poverty, the fear of what other people will think. And then it's like, that's when we really have to wake up and say, no, that doesn't have to happen. I can be different, and I can choose. Now, we also have to start to reframe the word failure, right? In that failure is only failure when you quit and you stop. Up until that, it's just a temporary defeat. It's just an obstacle, a challenge for you to bring more of yourself to the surface, to learn, to grow, to get to where you need to go. You know, I'll have clients that say, Stacey, I have this goal. I'm reading it in the morning, I'm reading it in the night, just hasn't transpired. And I personally, from Bob's work, we do put a date on it to keep us accountable to that date. But that doesn't mean that if it doesn't happen by that date, that it's not happening. That just means that you've mistaken the date. So I'll say to them, as well as myself, you know, if I haven't achieved my goal by X date, it's because there's still more for me to learn in this journey. I'm not ready to receive it. So it's about, you know, conceiving the idea, believing it, you'll achieve it, but you achieve it when you're ready to receive it. And until that time, there's just more for us to learn. So I just love that thought of like, oh, if I fall down, that's actually an opportunity for me to learn, to grow. Yes.
Right.
Not an opportunity for me to stay scared, or I've taken on the definition of success of it's the progressive realization of a worthy ideal.
Right.
So as long as I'm progressing and I'm taking action, that's that like 1% better every day, progress over perfection, then I am successful. You're not successful when you achieve the goal. You're successful the moment you decide what you want and decide to go after it.
Yeah, and that
so
was exactly what I was
that.
thinking when you were saying all that. Exactly spot on. I'm thinking, just because I missed my target doesn't mean I failed. Look at how, be appreciative and grateful for everything you've learned. You started here, now you didn't quite make it here, but you're here. So you've come all this way, and we forget that. And then we go back in those repetitive cycles. Oh, I suck. I'm pathetic. I should have never tried. I knew I'd fail, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I totally agree. Finding and seeing the success, even if it's just that 1% every day, little tiny steps. It's the idea of, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, but eventually you're going to get there. We're getting close to the end. I want to switch gears real quick and just ask, what was it like to work with the legendary, Bob Proctor? You've worked with Tony Robbins, Maxwell, Metzler, even Craig, our good friend, Craig Siegel.
Yeah.
And you've worked with Dispenza, but with Proctor's passing so recently, tell us about it. Like, what was that experience like?
So I have been blessed. Honestly, I decided to go full in and invest in myself, and it's been the best journey of my life. And when Bob passed, that day was really tough for me, and not because I know Bob was, at peace at who he is and the impact he's had, and that he'll continue to live. And we know that, he's just moved out of his body, but he's still with us all. But what made me so overwhelmed, honestly, that day with gratefulness, like I hardly could speak, was that if he didn't cross my path and say to me, don't let another person steal your dreams, would I be standing where I am today? Would have I had the opportunity to go on this journey and learn from him and the rest of the team at PGI, that ultimately I love studying Dr. Joe and his events, because, Bob teaches more of the theology side of it, where Dr. Joe proves it through physics and through science. And so I just feel there's this beautiful intersection between science and theology, that as a coach, then if there's someone that maybe doesn't believe as much into the theology side, we can share with them how quantum physics works and how this has been proven through science, so that, because again, both trains of thought cross. But what was it like? I mean, there's never been a person for me that had more impact in my life in such a short amount of time as Bob Proctor had. And he just was such an example of somebody who walked the talk, who studied every day, who, regardless of how good his life was, always knew that there was more and better and to go on, and coached us all to do that. He saw things in us that we didn't even see in ourselves. And so I take that as a coach now to say to people, like, that's why it's so important for you to have a coach, because you won't see something in you, but others will, and we can help to draw that out. And when you don't have the belief, you borrow some of ours until you develop it yourself. So, there's that quote that says, I love quotes, obviously, but Dr. Seuss quote that said, to the world, you're just one person, but to one person, you can be the world. And I think that, like, that's what Bob was to me, although, like, we weren't super close by any stretch of mean, that I've had the opportunity to work with other incredible mentors to that. The impact he had in changing the course of my life and allowing me to believe more in myself and listen to my inner self and trust more into my intuition was life-changing. And I'm forever grateful for that. So it was an experience that I'll forever treasure. And I'm so proud to be part of the Proctor Gallagher consulting team.
Right.
And so the one-on-one coaching I offer, although I have my own programs, but is the programs that he's developed, right, as far as thinking into results and leading the field. So you're getting, over 60 years worth of knowledge, and he's just proof that he just continued to seek and to seek and to seek and to learn and then implement. So I love that.
Oh, beautifully said. And the idea, it's so important to have coaches, to have people in our lives, that we resonate with. Find the right one. Like you said, some people, they want more of the scientific quantum realm. Dr. Joe is the guy to go to,
Yeah.
Bob and so many others are so spiritual. Find the right one. But when we do find the right one, it's a game changer. It changes everything. So, share just a little bit of information about your specific coaching, what you do, Raise Your Results Consulting and Coaching. Can you tell us a little bit about that, what you do, where people can find you, how they can work with you if they resonate with you? Make sure you give Stacey a call or reach out to her, but tell us all about it.
Thank you. Yeah, and I love what you're saying, because I think, and then in recognizing that as you increase your consciousness, you're going to be at a different vibration. So it's good to try different things, because everybody has something different to offer, and you will find on your journey that there's different things you need. Like, as I uncovered more of myself, I found different mentors that were in alignment with me and continued to move on. It's really that concept of, masterminding and surrounding yourself with like-minded people, especially the people that are doing what you want to do. You'll never go to somebody that's doing what you're doing and tell them your dream and then like, oh, that's not a good dream, right? That's impossible for you to do. But so often we say these dreams to people that aren't doing what we're doing, our friends and our family, and we're like, well, they told us not to do that. Well, they're not doing it, so why would you ask them, right? And so
they don't have a clue, right?
They don't know.
Like you're asking a garbage man how to perform heart surgery. They don't have a freaking clue.
They don't know. And chances are the people you're asking aren't living out their dreams either. So go to talk to the people that are doing what you're doing, or have taken a similar course or leap as far as like course of life, and the ones that you feel around, let your body feel it, because that's really where the resonance, it's like when you're standing in line at a grocery store and you can feel somebody looking at you and you turn over and they are. That's our intuition picking up on it, right? Or our intuition when we go buy something and we think, oh shit, I'd like to do that. We'll do it. Because
for the scientific people out there, we call that the reticular activating system.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
But in all actuality, it's our intuition. It's one of our superpowers. But yeah, I just wanted to throw that in. That it's also the reticular activating system. If you have to have some technical, like, well, why does that appear from out of the blue when I thought about it? There you go.
Yeah, and then one day we'll have to have another meeting. We talk about the quantum and how it's like everything is energy, and it doesn't even come into focus until you put your attention on it. That's where you put your attention is where your energy goes. So like, I love that we have all these phrases out there, like what you resist, persist. But if you don't understand why, they're just those phrases. And that's what Bob did. Like, Bob was a coach that he achieved a certain level of success, but then he wanted to know why, what changed in him to get that change, so that when he understood that, he could coach that to other people. So that's really, when you ask me about my coaching, why I talk so much about the subconscious and the conscious mind, is because you can't, we think in pictures, and we can't change what we don't see. And so I help in my coaching to give a picture of what the mind is. If the mind is our primary cause of our results, then we need a picture of that to change it. And so in my coaching one-on-one programs I offer, my favorite is ultimately thinking into results, but leading in fields are just one-on-one consultations. I have a group program of Becoming You. And so that also, if anyone's ever looking to speak to groups, my forte is ultimately helping people believe more in themselves through the power of self-image and thought. And also then with my corporate experience, I've, like I said, lived a life in people leadership and change management. So I love coming into companies and helping companies to teach their employees a new way of thinking through leveraging the power of their mind. So a different way of setting goals, a different way of looking at improving efficiencies and effectiveness, because ultimately a company culture is like a paradigm. So what is your paradigm, the habitual way of thinking at that company that's holding them back from achieving what they want? So, I mean, as far as that's what Raise Your Results stands for, as far as a consulting firm, a coaching and a speaking. And you can get a hold of me at www.raiseyourresults.ca, on Instagram at Stacey Vanthuyne, or Raise Your Results. My pillars ultimately, Joey, are around vision, vibration, becoming a victor, not staying a victim in your life. And lastly is vulnerability, because so often we're okay with saying I'm brave, I'm strong, I'm all these things, but you don't get to be brave, you don't get to be strong without being vulnerable. And when you're vulnerable, that means you're getting outside of your comfort zone, you're pushing for more, and ultimately that's where we grow. So
Nice.
that's what I do.
It's beautiful what you do, so much wisdom. Guys, if Stacey is resonating with you on what she does, reach out to her. I mean, she obviously knows and has been trained by some of the best and greatest in the world at this. So reach out to her, see how you can work with her for sure. I know the power of it. It'll be life-changing, so it's time for our last question that I ask all of the guests. And since this show is completely about how we create our own reality, I want you to imagine, if I snap my fingers right now, what reality would you jump into and why? Ready? Go.
Well, the reality I would jump into is honestly, I always envision myself living by a beach and ultimately supporting and making a dent to all the people I love, to go on the stage and present and to shine and let my energy automatically infuse with other people's and lift. When you raise your energy, you raise your results. And so if I was to do into my ultimate reality, which is the one I live in my mind, is that I'm already on those stages. I'm helping you with your companies as well as your own personal development. Thoughts do become things. So if you really believe that on a subconscious level, do not let one negative thought go into your mind anymore. Boot it out. And every morning before you take a step, intentionally make a decision of what that day wants to be like. And at the end of the night, intentionally ask for what you want. And that would be my reality, that people would understand that, wake up and be creating the life that they want for themselves.
I love that. Our realities are almost aligned identically. Beaches, yachts,
I felt that.
Speaking on stages. Yeah, how can we change the world? Give, and then we get to spend the rest of the time on the beach. So I'm with you completely. I love it. So Stacey, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been, I know it went a little long, but there was just so much good stuff. I couldn't hold you back. I couldn't stop. It's been another amazing show. So thank you so much for joining us.
I thank you for allowing me to share with your audience, and for you for providing this space. You're doing great work too. And I'm so excited that we're aligned and our paths have crossed, and look forward to doing more with you in the future.
Absolutely. And we will definitely be in touch and get some more things going. So I want to thank everybody who took the time to watch the video today. And if you liked it, if it resonated with you, make sure you give it a thumbs up, share it with your community, your friends. Reach out to Stacey if it sounds like she's the right fit for you. Also, if you haven't hit the subscribe button yet, go ahead and hit it so you'll get weekly updates or updates each week as new episodes come out. And until next time, thanks for watching. Stay blessed. And remember to always ask yourself, what reality are you choosing to create? Bye now.